Hey there, my name is Craig Nybo, and I am going to write a musical. It's actually the third musical that I've written. The first is called Space Funk, a science fiction funk opera, and that one I did not do by myself. I did it with my band. The band is called Rust Monster. You can stream that one online, or you can pick up a CD or something if you want to hear it. It's a comedy science fiction thing. The second one is one that I am just kind of finishing up. It's called Tesla versus Jerusha, Priestess of Cthulhu, and just getting the singers in line and doing the final recordings on that. So that one's forthcoming. And this new one, I found this story, or actually my son told me about this story, and it stayed with me. And I decided that it needs a musical. So this is going to be my next huge musical project, and it could take a year or more to develop this. But I thought it would might be fun to just record every part of the process, even the writing and all the boring stuff, and just post it on my YouTube channel. So I don't. Most of it's pretty boring stuff, but you're just gonna get to see all the work and all the mistakes, and I'll talk you through how I do it. Right now, I'm really at ground zero. I just have a kernel of an idea, and that's it. So here's the story. The story, there's not much information about this, and this is about it. This is a duplicate of about 3 or 4 different articles that I found. This happened in the late 1800s, like 1880 to 1890. 1880 to 1890. There's this guy who worked for the Port Elizabeth Railway Station, and this is in a town in South Africa. So I'm giving you what I know so far. His name is James Edwin Wide. James Edwin Wide, also known as Jumper, got his nickname because of his tendency to jump from rail cart to rail cart to rail cart. I guess he was some kind of a daredevil. Or he would swing between the box cars. Well, one day, Jumper fell and the train ran over his legs. And although he was rescued, he lost both of his legs. So he became a double amputee. Being a crafty man, Jumper went to work and built himself a pair of prosthetic peg legs out of wood and strapped them to his body. He was immediately fired from the railroad because he couldn't do his job, but he begged for a position to get back on at the railroad, and they let him become a switch operator. And so his job was to give the coal key to the trains, to sit in the switch house, and when the trains came by and blew their whistle 4 times, to come out and give the coal key to the trains so that they could get coal, or to pull the switches and let the engineers know which tracks they should go on. So this became his job. But it was difficult for him as a double amputee. He'd hear the whistle, and he'd have to come hobbling out of this house and pull the switch or give up the key. He actually made himself a little railway cart, and he lived a half a mile away from the railway station, and he would get in the cart and push himself up the tracks. The cart sat on the tracks, and it was uphill to get there, and that's how he got to work every day. Well, Jumper one day went to the market, and he saw a man, and the man had an ox-pulled cart, and the driver of the cart, or I guess the ox wrangler, was a baboon. And Jumper watched this baboon, how smart this animal was, and thought, well, that baboon could seriously help me if he's that smart. Like as a service animal, this baboon would be known as today. So Jumper went and talked to the owner of the baboon and pled and offered him what money he had. And out of sympathy for Jumper's plight, the owner of the baboon sold the baboon to Jumper. Jumper names the baboon Jack. So now we have Jack and Jumper. So Jack takes the baboon home, and they become quick friends. And pretty soon, Jack is so smart that he sees what's going on. He sees that when the engineers are tooting their whistle 4 times, that Jumper gives them a railway key. So Jack starts to do this. He starts getting the key, and when he hears the railroad whistles 4 times, he runs the key out and gives them to the engineers. Well, Jumper, seeing how smart Jack is, decides to train this baboon on how to run the switches. So he trains the baboon, and pretty soon, not only is the baboon giving the railway keys to the engineers, he's actually pulling the switches and letting the trains know which direction that they need to head. So he becomes really useful, and he's actually super good at his job. So this goes on for a long time. Here, I'm going to pull this out. So this goes on for a long time until one day a passenger, a woman, and I cannot find her name, so I'm probably going to have to make one up, sees that a baboon is running the switch. Alarmed by this, she reports to the railway company that a baboon is running the switch, and it's dangerous, right? So the railway company does the responsible thing, and they fire Jack and Jumper. So Jumper, in fear of losing everything and becoming homeless, pleads with the railway company to give him his job back. And he says, we're doing fine. We haven't had any mistakes. Jack is so good at his job that he never makes a mistake. He always pulls the right lever. He does everything right. So before you fire us, test him to make sure he's competent. And if he comes out on top, passes the test, give us our job back. So the railway company actually concedes to this, more out of novelty maybe than anything. But they go ahead and they test this baboon, and without Jumper helping, they honk the railroad lines with these signals, the signals to get on certain tracks or the signals to get the coal key, and they test this baboon, and the baboon does everything absolutely correctly, passes the test just as if he was a human having this job. So the railroad company decides not only to give Jumper back his job, but also to officially employ the baboon named Jack. So they give Jack a job, and they give him an official employee number for the railroad, and they give him a salary of 20 cents per month and a half a beer a week. And Jumper and Jack work together on that railroad, and it's reported by somebody named George B. Howe, who was the railway superintendent, that over the 9 years that Jack was employed by the railroad, he never made one mistake. Eventually, in 1890, Jack died of tuberculosis, and so the story kind of comes to a sad ending. So that's all I have on this story, and that's really all that exists. I've ordered books, and I've scraped the internet and tried to find what information I can, but there's enough there that I think there's a compelling story and a musical. I actually have a few photographs here. Maybe I can show you some photographs. So let's go in here. Okay, so here we go, Jack and Jumper. So there's the baboon, and there he is running the railroad, or pulling one of the switches. There's Jack and Jumper. There's a pretty good look at the rail house and the switchboard. There's the cart that Jumper made. Jack used to push him to work up the half-mile grade, and then on the way home, Jack would actually jump onto the rail cart with Jack. Jack would jump onto the rail cart with Jack and loved the ride downhill. So there they are, running the switches again. There's the cart today. They still have it at a museum down there. There's a great picture of Jack and Jumper. You get a good look at Jumper's legs, his prosthetic legs that he made, braced all the way up to his hips there. And, a couple of other pictures. So that's what I have to go on. So, all right, whenever I work on this project, I am going to post, or I'm going to record it. So you're going to watch the entire process. So the first thing I do with a story is I write I'm just in Microsoft Word here, is I put together what I call a story canon. I'm going to shrink this down. a story canon, and the story canon is is a folder with a bunch of files in it. So I'm going to actually start setting that up. Let's see, let's go in here. Okay, so Jack and Jumper. So first, I'm going to make a folder called Photos, and I'm just going to grab all these, and I'm going to put them in here. And I'm going to make another folder, and I'm going to call this Outlining, or Outline. And another folder in here, and it's going to be called Free Search. Research. I'm going to put my photos folder in my research folder. A lot of it is just getting organized. And let's see, let's take this. I haven't even saved it yet. So this is going into the research folder. Screenplays, Jack and Jumper, research, and here I'm going to put documents. Documents. And this is a summary articles. Some articles go in there. Okay, so the first thing I do is I usually write what's called a log line. So in a good log line, you're going to have a character, a little bit of character, and a little bit of conflict, and a little something about the story. So if somebody asks me, what project are you working on? This is kind of the elevator pitch. So I am going to say a South African, let's change it a little bit, a crippled what is the title of his job? Signalman. A crippled South African railway signal man buys a baboon to run the rail switches. So there's one. Let's do another one. A cropple. No, yeah, that'll probably do for now. Crippled South African railway signalman buys a baboon to run the rail switches. Okay, so I'm going to save this. It's going into outline. This is going to be called logline. Jack and Jumper. That's the working title. It's a crippled. Okay, so let's do one more version of it. So if somebody asks me, what's it about? It's about a crippled South African railway. Let's do this. The true story. The true story of a crippled South African railway signalman whose pet baboon runs the switch, the railway switch, for over 9 years without making a mistake. Now let's do one more. So what's this story about? It's about a baboon and a crippled South African no, let's see. Let's do this. It's about a baboon employed by the, I'm going to say, Port Elizabeth Railway Station. Okay, good. So now if somebody asks me, that's what it is. Now the reason I start with this log line is when I'm outlining something, I start with broad strokes and then I work my way in. So this is the broadest of broad strokes. Just what's it about? It's about a baboon employed by the Port Elizabeth Railway Station in South Africa, who for over 9 years ran the railway switches. It's about a baboon employed by the Port Elizabeth Railway Station in South Africa who for over 9 years ran the railway switches without making a single mistake. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's my log line. Okay, so I go from one step to the next to the next. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on what's called a treatment. And with a screenplay or with a stage play or with a novel, the logic is that you have Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And Acts 1 and 2 are half the size of Act 3. So it's like 10, 20, 10. Act 1 being 10, Act 2 being 20, Act 3 being 10. So for a treatment, what I do is I try to write one paragraph for Act 1, 2 paragraphs for Act 2, and 1 paragraph for Act 3. And when you work in chunks like this, it helps you to break it down, and it breaks loose ideas. And it breaks loose threads throughout the plot that you can build on later. So the next step is going to be writing a treatment. But I'm going to wrap this video up here. So thank you for joining me. And I don't know if this is going to be good or if it's going to be boring, but welcome aboard, so to speak. No pun intended. And I'll catch you on the next video.